Man, oh man, I couldn't even start the show, and Reed is already in the live chat asking about Jair Alexander. Good Monday morning, Duval. It is Monday, June 9th. Yes, the Green Bay Packers, who of course formerly employed one Anthony Campanile, have released former first-rounder Jair Alexander. I can assure you, Reed, yes, the over-under of 12 and a half comments. The under set it about, the over at minus 200. I really like those odds today because it is a Monday mailbag edition of Duval Rundown. So we do encourage you to leave a comment in the chat, whether you're watching on YouTube, X, or wherever you are listening live around the world. Of course, in case you are not listening to this live, you are listening on demand, either on the 1010XL Jaguars YouTube channel or the 1010XL Podcast Network. We encourage you to like this episode, subscribe to both of those channels as we continue to grow heading into the 2025 season. Mia O'Brien, excited to be joined by the voice of the Jacksonville Jaguars, as I am each and every Monday here on Duval Rundown, one Frangie. Although I got to tell you guys, I don't know what it is. I guess it's Monday in the NFL offseason. This is the second Monday that Frank has joined us. It's the second Monday that there is a golf tournament here in Jacksonville. And so we had to pre-tape Frangie's segment. So unfortunately, you won't be able to ask Frangie any questions live, but I will be sticking around after we play that interview, that conversation with the voice of your Jacksonville Jaguars to answer any and all Monday mailbag questions that you may have, including the 13 or so comments that we will surely get about Jair Alexander potentially being a target to the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's 9:06 a.m. now. I have no idea. I haven't heard any rumblings. There, let's just get it on out in the open. What Frank and I sought to do on today's episode, seek what the three biggest questions are now that the OTA portion of phase 3 of the offseason has concluded in the National Football League, and now we look towards mandatory minicamp. After mandatory minicamp, which runs this Tuesday through Thursday this week, the Jacksonville Jaguars will have approximately 5 to 6 weeks, depending on your count, away from the Miller Electric Center before training camp officially begins. We still haven't gotten an official start date on when training camp will begin, but obviously expect it to begin in late July prior to the Jaguars' first preseason game on, I believe that is August the 8th against, that's right, Aaron Rodgers and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not that I think Aaron's going to play, but I digress. Again, if you are watching live, either on YouTube or X, be sure to leave a comment, leave a chat. Would love to answer those questions live. If you are listening on demand, you can also leave a comment and, of course, like and subscribe to both of our channels. Here is Frangie, my good friend, with the biggest questions that we still have about your Jacksonville Jaguars. A pleasure to be joined by our good friend, the voice of your Jacksonville Jaguars, Frangie, on this fine Monday, as he does each and every Monday here on Duval Rundown. Frank, thanks so much for stopping by. Mandatory mini camp tomorrow, OTAs in the rearview mirror. How are we feeling this time of year when it comes to the hometown team?
You know, I like the changes. Look, and I'm a positive guy. I'm kind of that guy, that glasses half full guy. But I like them, Mia. I like the vibe. We've all been out there a bunch now. They've been kind enough to let us see a handful of the OTAs. I kind of like the way it feels. Now, look, everybody's undefeated in the offseason, and I know that. And and to their credit, they said you really can't tell anything with nobody hitting anybody. My friend Jeff Lagerman calls it the underwear Olympics, and I think it is that. But I kind of like where the vibe feels good to me, as good as it could feel at this point. It really does.
Move over NFL Combine. OTAs are the new underwear Olympics. Before we get to the three big questions we still have about the Jacksonville Jaguars, with 3 practices on field to go in the offseason program, let's talk about your friend Jeff Lagerman here for a second, because I heard it live during Jaguars Happy Hour on Jaguars.com a few weeks ago when he said that, having been involved in the National Football League since he was 21 years old and he's now 57, Travis Hunter is the single greatest athletic specimen he has ever laid his eyes on. And when I heard it, my bat signal went up and I went, oh boy, we need to reshare this and promote the fact that one of the greatest resources we have here in Jacksonville, because of his knowledge of the league, believes that Travis Hunter could be that guy. And to your point, look, he hasn't actually put pads on yet, but that's some pretty high praise, is it not, Frank?
I'll tell you a story about that, Mia. Years ago, we were doing our draft show. We did our pre-draft show, Tony Baselli, Jeff, and I, and they were talking about quarterbacks, right? And I don't remember who the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks were, but Jeff Lageman said, trust me when I tell you this, the generational quarterback in this draft is named Patrick Mahomes. And I said, Jeff, I hear a lot about him, but he's a Texas Tech guy. He's probably not going to the top 10. I doubt he's that. He said, Frank, he's got the best arm I've seen a quarterback come into the draft since maybe Elway. And again, I'm thinking it's hyperbole, right? Well, he was dead on. He was ahead of the curve there, Mia. Yes, he's told me the same thing about Travis Hunter. He sees something different and special. Look, we know he's different. We know he's special. We know there's things about him that we've never seen before. So hearing a guy like Jeff say it just kind of reemphasizes that. Look, of all the things we're excited about, I can't wait to watch him, man. I can't wait to watch how much he plays offense, how much he plays defense. Does he change games? Does he change directions? All the stuff, of all the things we're chomping at the bit to see in September, right? That's number one for all of us, I think. So, yeah, we've got a unicorn. I applaud James Gladstone and company for finding a way to get him in Jacksonville and not somewhere else, and I can't wait to watch him.
So on last Wednesday's edition of Duval Rundown, Hayes Carline and I picked the 3 players we are buying going into 2025, but I had to put the disclaimer out there, the asterisk of we couldn't pick Travis Hunter because I think everyone is buying Travis Hunter. So as we get set for the 3 big questions you still have, Frank, we had to put the disclaimer out there. Travis Hunter, well, yes, we believe is a known commodity. We obviously have questions there. So did want to just address that right off the top. So anything else on Travis before we get into your 3 big lingering questions before mandatory minicamp kicks off Tuesday?
Just a question we all have is how they'll break it down. You've asked me this before, and I've said it on our radio show. My guess is going to be he is a regular receiver in the offense. My guess is he's going to be in the slot, although they're going to move him all around. But my guess is when they're in their regular formation, that Brian Thomas Jr. and Giambi Brown will be outside and Travis will be in the slot. I'm guessing that. And I think he's going to be a regular receiver, play most of the time on offense. I think he's going to come in on defense on get off the field downs, 3rd down, 4th down, red zone downs late in the game. So, but I think that's the most intriguing thing is do we really know that? Heck, Mia, do they even know it yet, right? They got to see what kind of load he can handle. But I think that's the biggest question. But I can't wait to watch him. I'm as excited about watching him. I was thinking about this the other day. Hayes and I were talking about this on the radio show. I can't remember a newcomer I was this excited to watch other than Trevor Lawrence. Now, when Trevor Lawrence got here, we couldn't wait, right? But I can't remember a newcomer, free agent or rookie, that I was this excited to watch other than Trevor Lawrence, and Travis Hunter's that guy.
And certainly our YouTube audience would echo the same sentiment. I don't know if we've ever gotten this much traction on our social channels outside of when Trevor Lawrence was drafted in 2021, Frank, like we quite have with a superstar in more ways than one, Travis Hunter, joining the Jacksonville Jaguars. Quick note, he will be on the field, in your estimation and mine as well, on get off the field downs. Is Travis Hunter going to play inside, play outside? How do you believe that transition will go? Because someone else is obviously going to be opposite Tyson Campbell on 1st, 2nd down, and now you bring someone else in. Is that something that is going to be as seamless as it just sounded like coming off my tongue?
Yeah, I don't know if it's seamless because they got to figure it out, but I think outside. I think they've got their nickel corner in Jordan Lewis. Now we'll see again. They're going to line guys up all over the place in OTAs and mini camps and get the feel for it. But I think they signed Jordan Lewis to be their nickel, and I think he's going to be a really good one. So I think that position's taken. I think Jarian Jones became an outside. He's going to train at both probably because he'll probably be the backup nickel. But I think Jordan Lewis is their inside corner, Mia. So I think my guess is when in those big get off the field downs that they're not in dime. When they're in dime, they'll have 6 defensive backs. But when they're in nickel and there's 5 defensive backs, my guess is, and it's 3rd down and 8 from the plus 40, my guess is it's Tyson Campbell and Travis Hunter outside and Jordan Lewis in the slot. We'll see. But if you ask me to guess right now, that's my guess.
And Jordan Lewis had a would-have-been sack against Trevor Lawrence at Thursday's OTA. I mean, you saw it, Frank. He comes in like a freaking missile. I mean, this is a guy who can do a little bit of everything for this Jaguars defense. Very, very exciting. That's the Travis Hunter of it all. Of course, we had to lead with that. Let's start with your question number 1, Frank, as we get set for mandatory minicamp in Duval this week.
The most important storyline to me is does and will Trevor Lawrence take the next step? There's other storylines. There's other questions. I think he will. I'm a big Trevor guy. I really like him. I like the way he handles himself. You've heard me say this before, Mia. When you get to that 5th year, that's when quarterbacks, the light really goes on for all of them. We've seen it with Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield a little later in their career. Some guys, Patrick Mahomes and C.J. Stroud, a little earlier. But I think by year 5, the quarterbacks who are going to be good start getting really good. But the next step, you've heard Liam Cohen and Trevor talk about it, and I've talked us off kind of line a little bit about how the precision of the footwork in Liam Cohen's offense, that every step leads to when the ball comes out, maybe more than other offenses. I'm not an old football guy, but I've heard the football people talk about it enough that I think that really aids the development of a quarterback. We've seen it everywhere. So how does Trevor Lawrence develop? Does the passing game become, do we look up and Trevor Lawrence has 27 touchdowns and 5 picks and is thrown for over 3,000 yards? That's the next step. And will Trevor Lawrence take that next step? He's got the right coach, I believe. I love the 3 receivers because I think De'Ami Brown's going to be really good, the guy no one's talking about. There's enough people in the backfield. I hope the line's better. That'll be my next thing. But question number 1, storyline number 1 is, will Trevor Lawrence take that next step? If you're going to become a 10, 11, 12-win team at some point, Mia, you've got to have your quarterback take that next step.
So 2 things on that front, Frank. Number 1, for the purposes of mini camp this week, as well as training camp in about 6 weeks' time, and this notion from Liam Cohen at the podium last week, in which he said, I don't care if he misses throws right now. I need to see that he has a control of the offense, and I feel like he does. When will we have our answer that Trevor Lawrence is ready and is taking that next step?
I don't think you're going to have that till well into the season. We learned last year, preseason, the Jaguars were the most dominant team in the NFL in the preseason. They not only won all 3 games, they were good. You know, we all thought, and then they were a different team when the season began. So I don't think you're going to find it out then. I think you're well into the season. Look, there's a lot of newness, Mia. He does have to learn yet another system. Now, the good thing is he's gotten good at learning systems because he had to learn a bunch of them, right? So it's nothing new for him to have to relearn. It's not like a guy that's been in one system for 10 years and has to unlearn that, which is a good thing. But he's got to learn a system. He's got to learn that. He's got to learn new receivers. Of his top 3 receivers, 2 are brand new guys. He doesn't have Evan Ingram, so the tight end that he'll throw to the most is new in that regard, and Brenton Strange. So there's a lot of newness. That's going to take a while. He's not going to be the best quarterback in the league against Carolina. 5 games in, 6 games in, I think we'll have a pretty good idea of whether or not Trevor's taking that step.
One more on Trevor before we get to your big question number 2, and that is, in your estimation, you alluded to 27 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. What is the number? And I know it's unfair to actually put a number on Trevor Lawrence, but what is your threshold that will define success in 2025?
Now, it's a fair question. I think everybody looks at that stuff differently. Some people want accumulation of passing yards. I'm not a fantasy guy, so I don't play a lot of fantasy. So accumulation of yards isn't as big a deal to me. I really do think that touchdown interception ratio is the big thing. I think it with college quarterbacks, Mia. I think it with pro quarterbacks. I think it with high school quarterbacks. I think there's a reason people lump those 2 numbers together, because they speak to efficiency. I think the touchdown interception ratio is critical. If he's got 13 touchdowns and 10 picks, then I don't think he's succeeded to be where he wants to be. I really don't. So I think you got to get into the 20s, maybe the 30s, but you got to get into the 20s in touchdown passes, and you have to stay in single digits with interceptions. If you've done that, then I think you've taken a big step forward. And I expect that, by the way. I think 21-9 would be is the floor for me. I think more higher into the 20s, lower with interceptions. But if you're asking me the metric that I watch the closest, it's the touchdown interception ratio, because that speaks to efficiency, and you've got to be efficient.
His best mark up to this point, 25 touchdowns, 8 interceptions in that second year in the National Football League, first year under Doug Peterson. I think certainly getting past that threshold, I mean, I feel like that's a fair, hey, you've at least got to get there, because at the same time, I also feel, and not to let the cat out of the bag of what I believe your second burning question is, Frank, but I also believe if you're Liam Cohen and you're leaning into your offensive line and you're leaning into your run game, much like Justin Herbert's numbers went down last year in the touchdown department, but the interception number went down. That's where I think maybe that 25, I mean, that's got to be the base, right? When it comes to touchdowns. And then 8 has to be the absolute max when it comes to picks.
Yeah, and I think so too. And I think 25-8 under Doug. Look, they were good. Their offense got going that year. They did a great job. It regressed afterwards, but it got going after. Yeah, I think so. I think you haven't shown the progress if you haven't done that. Now I will say there's one caveat. I really love this about Liam Cohen. They're going to run the football. If there's one thing Liam Cohen has made clear in his words and in his actions before he got here as a play caller, you got to run it. Everyone says you got to run the football. I got to run the football. I got to run the football. Well, people don't always play call to that. People don't always live up to that, or the team doesn't always deliver that. You got to run the football. So he's going to have fewer passing yards than Joe Burrow, who's going to throw more passes, right? But you got to run so there'll be some balance, but the efficiency numbers should stay the same.
And of course, if that run game is to be successful, even though as running backs coach Chad Morton told us at coach availability last Thursday with the assistant coaches that he has seen running backs who have succeeded in spite of a middle of the road offensive line. Something tells me that's your second big question when it comes to the Jaguars post OTAs.
It really is. I'm going to lump two things together because I want this second question. I'm going to make it a combined answer or combined concern. The offensive line and the defensive tackle. Can I have those together?
Yes, the trenches. So Trevor Lawrence is big question number 1. Yeah. The trenches, big question number 2.
That's right. The entire offensive line, how will they play together? Because it was not a very good line last year. They couldn't run it at all. And I'm going to put the tackles in there with them. I'm pretty good about the defensive ends. I think the defensive ends are going to have gigantic years. They're both in better shape. They're both lean. They've got some backups now, so they'll be able to catch their breath a little bit. But the defensive tackle position, can Devon Hamilton and Eric Armstead hold up? If they hold up as starters, and all of a sudden Mason Smith and Tyler Lacey and Jordan Jefferson don't have to be critical players. They can grow. I think Mason Smith's going to be good, but I want to see him have time to grow. If Devon can be what he was before the illness, and Eric Armstead can find, at age 31, can find his form from a few years ago, that's critical. And on the offensive front, it's all open, man. I hope Hainsey and McCarry make them tougher in the middle. I think they're going to start. The tackle position is wide open. I think there's going to be great competition there. Ezra Cleveland is very athletic. Will he be physical enough? So the physicality of the trenches is my second question, because it was a gigantic concern a year ago, and it's got to get better.
I will refrain from going on my diatribe regarding the tackles as I have on the last few Duval Rundown episodes, and certainly on helmets and heels. But tell me this, Frank, do you think that there is any young player, not named Wyatt Milam, on the offensive side of the ball? Is there any young player who crashes the party, or all those names we alluded to? Like, is that what those two lines are going to look like in your estimation right now?
Well, if you don't use Wyatt Milam, because he's the obvious answer to your question, I think probably the potential star of that group and I'm putting both lines together, is Mason Smith. Mason Smith might be a great player, Mia.
He might be the biggest X factor on this team. And we said that last year because his ceiling is Chris Jones, because this is a player who, while yes, is one of the larger specimens on this roster, he does have that ability, because he showed it at LSU, to even line up in a wide 9 like Chris Jones does when he identifies. And part of this is because he's a veteran now. He'll identify a mismatch and say to his defensive staff, I'm going here because this is where I know I can maximize our opportunities to get after the quarterback.
Yeah, I think he's the guy of all the guys you asked about. He's the guy more than anybody else that could be the star. But back to your big question about the offensive front of the tackles, I don't know who the two tackles are going to be. I don't know that it's going to be Walker Little and Anton Harrison. It might be. But I think Udoga is going to battle. I think Fred Johnson's going to be in that hunt. I think they're going to move people around. Same thing with Wyatt Milam or Ezra Cleveland. I don't know who it's going to be. I assume Hainsey and McCarry are going to start at guard and center, or right guard and center. Other than that, I think the whole thing's wide open on the offensive front. I really believe that. That's why we all have so many questions about the offensive line. Two things, man. Number one, it wasn't very good last year. And number two, we really don't know who's going to be in any of those spots. We could say, well, yeah, it's going to be Walker and Anton and Ezra Cleveland. Well, we really don't know that. And the one thing Tony Boselli has said from day one, the one thing he said on air with us when we've had him since he's been in this role, is there is going to be competition at that spot, and all 5 of those guys are going to have to earn that spot. Look, there's no competition at quarterback. You know who the quarterback is. There's no competition in those 3 wide receiver spots. There's no competition at middle linebacker and starting corner and your 2 defensive ends. You know who those guys are, Mia. But I think there's competition at all 5 offensive line spots. I believe that in my soul. I really do. That's why it's such an intriguing position.
So Trevor Lawrence, physicality of the trenches. What is your third and final big question post OTAs, Frank Frangie?
Off-field stuff is not getting in trouble. Off-field stuff, culture, trust, who steps up in the tough moments. That's the third thing for me. Number 1, Trevor's development. Number 2, will they be tougher in the trenches? Number 3, the big picture. Boy, the culture feels great. It feels like they trust each other. But the best teams in the NFL, Mia, trust each other when adversity hits. They don't fall apart. The better players play better. The young players are led by the veteran players. There's a real mix on these teams. There's 53 guys. Let me tell you what you're going to have with 53 guys, Mia. You're going to have some guys in their 30s. You're going to have a few guys 21 and 22. But most of your guys are between 24 and 29. That's what your team is. Which one of those guys emerge as leaders? Which one of those guys connect with the younger players? That didn't work last year. I can tell you that Ryan Nielsen, as defensive coordinator, did not connect with his players. There were some players with some head scratching. There were some guys that were out of position. They knew they were out of position, so they didn't believe in what was happening. I'm not saying they didn't believe in each other, but they didn't believe in the plan. The culture was broken, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. That's the big third part. I know that's cliche. I know people think that, oh, does that really matter? Well, it does matter. So for me, the development of Trevor Lawrence, 1, the toughness in the trenches, 2, and the overall culture and trust when adversity hits, 3. Those are my big 3 questions.
Yeah, because I mean, that goes for whether you're playing in the National Football League or any job, any walk of life, Frank. If you don't believe in what your company's mission is, you're probably not going to play to the best of your ability.
Well, and an addendum to that, if you don't believe in your company's mission, you're right. It could be the insurance company, right? Mm-hmm. If you don't believe in the company's mission, then you don't necessarily trust the person in the cubicle next to you because you're fighting for survival and you don't believe he's been properly guided. All that stuff matters, man. And that stuff matters. You're right. And whether it's football or anything else, so I think that's a big part of it.
And when your bosses are worried about self-preservation, then you also become worried about self-preservation. No need to be concerned about that. Just fighting for competition, just sheer, hey, we love football. We want to get on the football field. It's no longer about I'm fighting for job security or anything quite like that. Frank, thanks so much for hopping on Duval Rundown this morning. Again, mandatory mini camp will kick off Tuesday at the Miller Electric Center. Any last minute thoughts from you as we get set for 3 more days on the field before the 6-week NFL dead period?
No, just I feel good about it. The last thing we just talked about, culture and trust and belief. I have this hunch, they're going to have that part down. I really do. We'll see if the players are good enough. We'll see if the plan is good enough. But I really do like the vibe. I'm excited about it, and we'll learn more about that as we get closer. And I can't wait to watch minicamp next week. So I'm with you. Thanks for having me on. I can't wait for the next step.
Frank Frangie, the voice of your Jacksonville Jaguars. Of course, also catch them 4 to 6 p.m. Monday to Friday, including today, right here on 1010XL. Welcome back, and thanks to Frank for joining us again in case you missed us off the top. A second Monday in a row that Frank Frangie has joined us, but we have had to actually tape that conversation because, unfortunately, we have another golf tournament here in the great city of Jacksonville live on this Monday morning. Today's golf tournament is actually for Frank's Foundation. In case you're not familiar with Walk-Off Charities, they do a tremendous job of bringing the game of baseball to underserved youths who otherwise might not have an opportunity to play the game, to learn the game of baseball, whether that be providing free clinics, providing equipment. They do some amazing, amazing work. So be sure to check out Walk-Off Jacks, the Walk-Off Charities Golf Classic, the 4th annual going on today. And so that is why we tape with Frank Frangie. So he will not be able to answer your live questions. However, I am here. So keep them coming in the YouTube chat, on X, wherever you are listening live to this podcast. And again, if you are listening on demand, be sure to like, subscribe, and maybe tune into a live episode Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9:04 a.m. Although I will have a programming announcement after we finish this Monday mailbag edition. Let's start with where we began. How about that? Reed said, in case you guys missed this, that he expects to have somewhere between 12 and a half comments by the time all is said and done in this Monday mailbag. with comments regarding Jair Alexander. In case you missed the breaking news of the National Football League this morning, yes, Jair Alexander released by the Green Bay Packers after much speculation that potentially he could be traded by Green Bay. Certainly Anthony Campanile, the defense coordinator for your Jacksonville Jaguars, came from Green Bay. Yes, Social, I see at least one comment. So maybe we actually didn't hit the overread because Socials, I believe, is the only one that I have right now. But maybe some more will come through here on this Monday morning. Mia, do you think a swing is taken for Jair? I personally don't know his health status, but he was due $16 million in 2025. Coach Camp may have a feel for him. I would say Coach Camp definitely has a feel for him, Social. I've seen, at least in the last 20 minutes or so, there's a segment of Jags AM, in case you don't listen to the Jaguars in-house podcast network, you should, where John Osher was quoted saying maybe the Jaguars would still add to their defensive back room. Some people dot connecting and saying maybe that is Jair Alexander because Travis Hunter will be playing more on the offensive side of the ball to begin. I have no intel, so I'm not going to speculate. What I can tell you is yes to what Social said. This idea of Jair Alexander has not been healthy, and that's part of why Green Bay parted ways with him this morning. And that is where this question of, are you going to pay someone 8 figures, right? I'm doing the math in my head. Yes, eight figures if they're only going to play 7 games of an NFL season. And so that's where my questions for Jair really begin. As far as a fit in the system, look, we're still learning exactly what Anthony Campanile's system is. So I can't tell you whether or not he would be a great fit. I do think, and this is an interesting comment from Robert earlier in this episode with Frank, that Jordan Lewis could mix it up a little if he played some snaps outside. I agree with Frank. I think that Jordan is predominantly the nickel corner. I believe, and again, this is just from my personal assessment and of how they've built this roster, not even of what I've seen at OTAs, just how they've built this roster. You went out and the first player you signed in free agency was Jordan Lewis, who rated as one of the highest nickel corners in the National Football League last year, despite having one of the highest graded rookie nickel corners last year in Jarian Jones, who, of course, as he told us on 1010XL, he said it on News for Jax as well, he expects to compete for snaps outside. Then you factor in the Travis Hunter of it all. As Frank alluded to, in case you missed it, you can go back, slide on your YouTube dial, and you can listen back to the point that we made off the top of Frank's conversation with me today. He believes that when Travis Hunter comes in on money downs, he will be the outside corner. And so at that point in time, are you keeping Jarian on the field? Are you keeping Jordan Lewis on the field? Jarian says he guards people, and so perhaps he even slides to a safety spot. Maybe they play a ton of dime. I'm really fascinated to see what they do with the pieces they have, let alone if they were to actually add a Jair Alexander and what that would do for this defense. Robert also chimes in, will there be more crossing routes than the last 2 years? Robert, my hope would be yes. The middle of the field was neglected to the point of malpractice after Christian Kirk's devastating injury on Monday Night Football and the loss in 2023 to the Cincinnati Bengals. You can go back and look at the plot charts. From that moment forth, even when Christian Kirk returned in 2024, it was as if there was just this gaping hole in the middle of the field. And that was even with Evan Ingram, who, yes, battled injuries in 2024. But yeah, I would have to hope there will be more. I am fascinated to see whose role that will be. Certainly, the Jaguars signed not 1, not 2, but 3 veteran blocking tight ends. I've told you guys, and I will continue to say it, I was really high on Hunter Long, and I told it to him to his face a couple weeks ago. I was really high on Hunter Long in the pre-draft process coming out of Boston College as someone who not only could give you something in, as a blocker, but that also could give you something in the passing game. That hasn't really been the case. He hasn't been 100% healthy between his time with the Miami Dolphins and then his time with the Los Angeles Rams. I wouldn't be surprised, and maybe it's just based on sheer numbers and knowing that Johnny Munt is the blocker between Kevin O'Connell and Sean McVay's systems over the last 6 years, and he is going to be a blocking tight end, and Quentin Morris definitely is a blocking tight end. I think Hunter Long is, he is easily your Luke Farrell replacement. And so you couple that with Brenton Strange and obviously the work he can do underneath. Brian Thomas Jr., does he play more on the slot? Does he not? Maybe that's a conversation we will get into at some point here this summer before training camp kicks off. And then you consider if you're going to play Travis Hunter in the slot as well, and Parker Washington factors in. So yes, I just rattled off like 6 names. So the answer is yes, they will attack the middle of the field, which is very, very exciting. And then yes, to Reed's point, also the screen game. Much better screen game. I think that will help. Brian's question. Can Camp put together a scheme that actually utilizes the talent he has available to great effect? Can he make the sum total more than the parts? Two things to that, Brian. Number one, it's a plug. All of our conversations with the Jaguars assistant coaches are now live on the 1010XL Jaguars YouTube channel. So make sure you go and you check all of those out. Really interesting conversation with Bill Sheridan, the senior defensive assistant who was with Coach Camp, not only at Boston College, but also at Michigan. And right off the top, I asked him about, did you think 7 years ago now at Boston College in 2018, did you believe then, or 5 years ago at Michigan, that Anthony Campanile would become a defense coordinator? And he said, he always had the bravado to do it, but I would be lying if I didn't say that his sophisticated knowledge of defense has skyrocketed since joining forces with Vic Fangio, since joining forces with Brian Flores, since teaming back up once again with Jeff Hafley, and how that has created such a sophisticated understanding of schemes, of coverages, and how you design a defense. And it's a really great conversation, especially that part right off the top about how Camp has had so many influences, and some of those influences are some of the most influential minds when it comes to defense currently going in the National Football League in terms of, hey, my defense may not look the same year to year, but I'm taking the talent that I have and I'm maximizing the most that I can out of said talent. And so those are some great conversations. We've got every assistant coach basically under the sun now up on the 1010XL Jaguars YouTube channel. So check that out. I would, again, also couple it, Brian, with this. The Jaguars, if they felt they didn't have the right parts, they would have addressed defensive line, in my estimation, much earlier in the NFL draft. They would have addressed it much earlier in free agency. The fact that they went through an entire free agency period, they did not sign in the first wave, I should say. In the first wave, they did not sign a single edge rusher or defensive lineman. They did not sign anyone until after the draft, in which they also, the only defensive lineman, quote unquote, they drafted was a buck linebacker out of Auburn and Jalen McLeod, who began at a mid-major in App State. Then they go out and they sign Emmanuel Agba. Now they've gone out and they've re-signed Dewan Smoot. But that's it. That is it, outside of signing a bunch of rookie free agents and saying we want them to compete. And then within 3-4 weeks of OTAs saying, you know what, we're also going to add Smoot, who of course can play inside and outside. What that says to me is that while I believe the signing of Smoot says we like the young kids, but we would rather bank on the guys we know, it also says they really like the guys they have in the building. And so to that point, this idea of putting together a scheme that utilizes the talent and that he already has available, clearly they like the talent that they already have available on the roster. And I don't know if that's everyone in Duval County, but it certainly is this camp, pun intended, which, as Queef says, Coach Camp is inheriting an absolutely loaded front seven. He was the best offseason hire. If you believe in this front seven like they do, then yes. I think that there is something to be said about the fact of the moves that they made that says that is a vote of confidence to them, not just from James Gladstone in the front office, but from Anthony Campanile and his defensive staff. One more on the defensive side of the ball from Robert. Will Caleb, I'm assuming you mean Caleb Ransaw, get an opportunity? I saw Coach Camp working with him. I absolutely believe that Coach Camp will have an opportunity. I believe that Caleb Ransaw will have an opportunity to start. I think that safety, Frank wants offensive line. I know a lot of you in the comments want to talk about offensive line and the open competition that it will be. Okay, sure. Yeah. Hey, listen, it's good they're saying it. These guys know they're being pushed. It's not a bad thing. I want you to say out loud that Chuma Edoga is going to start over Walker Little. Say that out loud and tell me that makes sense to you. And if it does, okay, good for you, but it doesn't make sense to me. Safety is a different story. I think safety is as wide open a position battle for a starting spot as any position on this entire roster. And I think a big reason for it is because the safety group that you've assembled, they can all do so many different things. Caleb Ransaw is a converted defensive back. Obviously, Rayon Lane out of Navy is a 5th, 6th, 7th, I forgot what round. Day 3 pick who's coming in, is going to have to adjust to the speed of the game. You've got Darnell Savage, who came here thinking he would be playing more of a slot position, did not last year, ended up having to play more traditional safety like he did in Green Bay, ironically, with Jair Alexander, because quite simply, they didn't have any safeties who they could trust in the back. Antonio Johnson, I saw a couple of you saying it online, and I echo the sentiment. I want it all to come together for the former 5th-round pick out of 2023. Played the most snaps of any safety in the slot his final season at Texas A&M. He is an athletic specimen out there, folks. I've been at every OTA so far, and you just look at him, and in the words of Coach Campo, he's just a long, strong, physical, broad-shouldered defensive back, and you're like, I just want this to come together because he has the physical measurements. Now can it actually all come together in this new scheme and with this new coaching staff? You have the 2 stalwarts, special teams aces, God's gunner, Daniel Thomas, my friend, my other friend, Andrew Dewey Wingard, who I will be joined by tomorrow on the field following the first day of mandatory minicamp. So keep an eye out for that interview. Our annual summit, myself and Dewey. Maybe we'll have some fun tricks involved on the 1010XL Jaguars YouTube channel. But those are 2 guys who, look, they're obviously special teams aces, but they have had starting experience when called upon. Dewey, certainly in that 3 safety look back in 2022, was extremely effective in fitting the run. And so you factor the 2 of them in. And so it's just a group that there's so many different pieces and they can all do a little bit of something. Oh, and Eric Murray, by the way, who the Jaguars spent primo money on in free agency. So yeah, he's also going to be a factor, if only by the fact that they gave him the money that they did. And so it's so many different bodies and different skill sets that I'm really fascinated to see exactly what they do. But I do believe Caleb Ransall will be given an opportunity to start and an opportunity to compete here his rookie season at safety. This one is from Mississippi Mikey. When are we going to get the great combo of Mia and Baloo? I need it. In due time, Mississippi Mikey, in due time. We will make sure that we will get a Mia Baloo combination episode. A couple more coming in for Jair Alexander. I don't know if we will actually hit the 12.5 that Reed said at the top of the show as the over-under. I like this one from Social. Has anyone's stock risen since the beginning of OTAs, in your opinion? That's a good one. Certainly Hayes Carline and I last Wednesday did a who are we buying, whether that's stock, buying the hype episode. Be sure to go check that out on demand. That's a great one. Has anyone's stock risen? I mean, again, we can't pick Travis Hunter. That's kind of in the rule. I don't know. That's a really good one, Social. I'd have to think about it. Just because, look, at this point in time with OTAs, it's really difficult to evaluate. They're not thumping. They're not hitting pads. Actually, you know what? Here's one I'll give you. You know whose stock has risen to the point that I'm like, okay, he's on the team, and I'm not just saying it because his college coach said it on 1010XL. I think LaKent Allen's on the team. Not that I didn't think he was on the team before OTAs started, but I think that the combination of Bashal Tutin, and again, we'll see. We'll see what happens with the 4th-round pick out of Virginia Tech, how he comes along. But, you know, it's been documented, a few drops here and there, and that was something that was a question coming out of college. And look, Jamar Chase had drops, and everyone wrote him off. And now look at what he's doing. He's a top 3 wide receiver in the National Football League, so I'm in no way writing Bashal Tutin off. But I've been really impressed with LaKent Allen because of everything that he does that maybe isn't in the repertoire or the bread and butter skill set of Tank Bigsby, Travis Etienne, and Bashal Tutin. The pass pro, he glides from left to right a lot smoother than I thought. He's a bigger bodied guy. Not that those other 3 aren't, but he's a taller running back, or at the very least, he gives that impression. And so I've been really impressed with him. And he's also looked pretty good in the receiving game. And so I think that I'm more assured than ever that, yes, he will be on the 53-man roster. Certainly, we talked about it before on this podcast, and we will again, this idea of the 9 draft picks are probably going to, in some form or fashion, make this roster because they are the first draft class of this new regime. But I've been very impressed by him, and I think that LaKent Allen is someone who we'll be keeping an eye on. Let's see, a couple more. Reed Zaw says, has Javon Foster's name been mentioned at all this offseason in a positive manner? Anyone tried to talk to him? I don't believe anyone at 1010 has talked to him, Reed. Certainly it did come up when I had Ezra Cleveland on last week. We are not allowed to comment specifically as part of the NFL's offseason media protocol exactly where players are lining up on the field. But since Ezra Cleveland noted it, he noted that Javon is among the group that is pushing Ezra and Patrick McCarry at the guard position. You can listen to that interview on demand on 1010XL Jaguars on YouTube. So I will let you go ahead and make your own assessment as far as where Javon Foster is playing and what that kind of means as far as where he could fit into this roster, and certainly where he could fit into this new ecosystem. Okay, let's see. We've got any more. We had this one is from Ray. Last year, the Jags defense had a bunch of players playing out of position and rotating in and out. Do you think more consistency will improve the defense even before they step on the field? That's a great one to end on, Ray. Yes, and that was echoed by the likes of Josh Hines-Allen when he spoke at the podium last week. That was echoed by Trayvon Walker when he spoke the week prior to that, or maybe it was the Tuesday prior to that, whenever it was. These players have made it very clear. Eric Armstead said it on John Osher's The Ozone podcast. This idea of the weight gain, a lot has been made about that. But more than that, it's the getting lathered up, actually playing play to play, snap to snap, not playing on first down, coming off on second down, and having to play rock, paper, scissors to know whether or not you're going to play on third down. Yes, in case you missed it, that's a real thing that happened. Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines-Allen admitted they once had to play rock, paper, scissors to see who was going to go onto the field on third down. So that is where I'm very fascinated to see if that does indeed translate. I believe it will. This idea of, yes, while I have advocated for both of those players to not play 85% of the snaps, and technically, according to ESPN's Mike DiRocco, I think Josh's count went down from 77% of the snaps to 73%, and Trayvon's was like 76% of the snaps to 72%. The herky-jerky nature of when they actually were on the field and being, on and off. And that's not to dismiss this idea of when it comes to defensive linemen, it will still be a rotation, maybe not hockey shifts, but it will be a rotation. Those two players are not going to be on the field every single down. But at the same time, if there is, much like on the offensive side of the ball, if there's a grander plan and there's a sense of, hey, we want to create momentum by having Josh on the field for 3 straight downs. We want to create, okay, it's 2nd and 3, and we know they're going to run the ball. So we're going to go with a heavier package. So we're going to take Josh off. We're going to put Trayvon inside, having a sense of a bigger purpose, if that makes sense. That's something that we've talked a lot about on the offensive side of the ball, this idea of, maybe Press Taylor just wanted to call plays because they were cool, not because they actually related to each other. You could make the argument on the defensive side of the ball that it was similar. It was, okay, well, we're running this package. We're running this scheme. We're running this coverage, even if it didn't actually relate to the scheme, the coverage that you were going to run on the play before or the play after. I think it's just about creating that continuity and fluidity. That's what I really took away from Josh and Trayvon, even more so than the weight gain comments that I know a lot has been made of and will continue to be made of. For good measure, Reed, we got one more from Tuck the Fightins. Do you think we take a swing at Jair Alexander? I don't know. I've said it 3 times today. I don't know. We appreciate you guys joining for a live Monday edition of Duval Rundown. Hey, I mentioned a programming update, so let's do it here now, especially since we have people asking about would Rick join the show at some point in time. He will. Here's the game plan, folks. So today, Monday, June the 19th, is our last live show here at the home office for now. We are going to have a special roundtable Mia, Hayes, Frank, that will go live. It will be taped, but it will go live Wednesday because I am leaving for vacation Wednesday. Much like the Jacksonville Jaguars are about to take the next 5.5 weeks off, we will sort of kind of do that here on Duval Rundown. I can promise you we are aiming to, and I've had great conversations about some special guests from a variety of different national outlets. We're going to call those the Duval Rundown pop-up episodes. My goal is to get one of those per week during this 5-week period to your inbox, to your YouTube podcast network, wherever you get your Duval Rundown content. We are aiming to get one of those to you per week. But much like the NFL teams, we need a little bit of vacation. Nothing wrong with that. Once training camp does kick off, and this is one that we are still finalizing, obviously, Jaguars practices take place in the morning. So myself, Hayes, Frank, Rick, we're all going to be on the field, Hacker too. So we won't be able to do live at 9:04 a.m. We will be doing live 9:04 a.m. podcasts, a bunch of us together here on Duval Rundown, on the days the Jaguars do not practice during the months of July and August. So we'll give you those dates ahead of time. Don't worry. And then we'll have some pop-up episodes as well. Again, I know that's a whole heck of a lot, so just know this. I will be back here on Wednesday with Frank and Hayes, and then we're going to take a little bit of a break, but we will continue to deliver pop-up Duval Rundown podcasts here throughout the next 5.5 weeks as the Jaguars take a well-deserved break, and so do we. That does it. We appreciate everybody for hopping in. Be sure to like this episode, subscribe. Go check out Friday's episode too, by the way, with Ben Gessling of the Minnesota Star-Tribune. It's awesome. We look at Kevin O'Connell's trajectory, his transition from an offense coordinator under Sean McVay to head coach in the National Football League. I think you guys will really, really enjoy that one here, especially as the dog days of summer roll on. We'll catch you guys on Wednesday.